Yang kamu tanyakan gimana? Project ini gimana? Apa yang kamu tanyakan gimana? Prediksi Ethereum berapa di cycle kali ini? Menurut gue bisa 6.000 lah, 6.000, 6.500.
6.000 possible.
8.000 sih possible tapi dikit banget persentasenya.
Cuma itu orang-orang City lagi itu tuh mau bikin hidupin meme Vegeta lagi tuh, tahu gak? Yang dulu it's over 9,000.
Iya,
Itu
iya.
kan dipakai buat BTC kan. Sekarang katanya mau dibuat ETH.
Ethereum. Apa nih yang menarik lagi guys?
Bahas PAM bang, itu udah nggak menarik. Itu sempet PAM kita bahas di cuan troopers ya, dia mencari ilham dari bottom naik sampai turun lagi, sekarang itu udah bahas. Jadi sekarang udah lagi nggak menarik, soalnya emang ya si Alon Yahudi memang lagi nggak goreng aja. Itu bener-bener PAM itu tergantung kondisi launchpad-nya. Kalau sekarang emang lagi nggak menarik. Apalagi nih.
Bang Ham lihat kamera.
Hai gitu. Ya kan tadi sambil lihat data Jul.
Ada apa lagi? Kayaknya udah ke cover semua sih untuk crypto ya. Harusnya udah all good.
Aneh, ada yang nanya Bitkit kapan collab sama Thrift ya?
Tanya orangnya lah. Kenapa tanya kita ya? Emang kita siapa ya?
Kita bukan siapa-siapa.
Bukan siapa-siapa kita. Kan tanya Pak Gabriel Ray atau tanya siapa namanya? CEO si Bitkit itu? Gracie Chen. Udah tanya mereka, jangan tanya kita, Pak. Kita siapa di sini? Kocak.
Coin AI masih menarik gak? Lagi kurang. Emang lah, untuk kripto ya belakangan ini memang lagi nggak ada narasi lokalnya. Sebelumnya kan ada kan dulu kayak AI ada musimnya, terus sempat stable coin, terus sempat apalagi tuh banyak RWA. Sekarang lagi nggak ada, benar-benar ngikut ya itu legacy market, ngikut stock index US. Benar-benar nggak ada yang lokalan. Yang lokalan kemarin sempatnya karena ETH aja sih, itu doang. Selanjutnya ya narasi lain lagi nggak ada.
Ekosistem Ethereum yang lagi menarik apa, Ham?
Ekosistem Ethereum. Oh, kalau untuk Ethereum yang benar-benar lagi rame dan digoreng belakangan ini adalah Zora. Zora itu dia sebenarnya layer 2 dari untuk NFT ya, layer 2 Ethereum untuk NFT. Cuma mereka bikin kayak media sosial gitu. Ya, sejenis Sparkcaster dan Lens lah ya. Cuma bedanya di sana adalah setiap postingan bisa jadiin token, di tradingin. Nah, itu emang lagi digoreng. Even
lihat kamera.
iya.
Lihat gue.
Lagi digoreng banget sama founder base-nya itu JC Polak, sama juga ya kemarin sempet tuh waktu weekend foundernya Coinbase si botak Brian Armstrong dia beli koin Balaji itu ya tokennya dari Zora juga lah. Jadi emang ekosistem Zora ini lagi digoreng banget karena base juga sendiri kan lagi nggak ada mereka belum luncurin token dan emang kayaknya tidak berencana luncurin token. Jadi ya orang bettingnya untuk growth dari base ini ke token ekosistemnya. Jadi ya mumpung ETH lagi naik, base-nya growth-nya lagi naik, Zora juga lagi naik, ya jadi mereka bettingnya ke Zora. Gitu, makanya sebulan ke belakang ya naik berapa kali lipat itu, 5 kali lebih ya. Tuh, ya bukan nyaran untuk masuk sekarang sih, cuma kalau kalian mencari trading plan bisa ya masuk Zora aja nanti kalau ada strength. Gitu
ya. Apalagi nih? Kayaknya udah beres sih. Crypto market kayaknya udah beres. So, berapa menit ini Jul? I think cukup ya. Cukup untuk publik ya. Sisanya kita bakalan bahas di dalam ya. Ada lagi yang pengen ditanyain teman-teman untuk crypto market updates? Tadi ada yang tanya juga total 3 ya. Coba kita intip ya total 3. Total 3 masih di atas 1 triliun ya. Masih bagus banget sih. Total 3 kalau kita cek di weekly time frame-nya.
My business is thriving. So when I heard that ClickUp is the AI work platform that grows successful companies,
went up.
Yeah.
How concerned are you that this is going to happen this time around?
Yeah, I don't think we're really concerned that 10-year yields are going to go too much higher if the Fed is really cutting. We saw that on Friday. A dovish chair means 10-year rates lower too.
You also said we don't expect 50s. Meaning,
Yeah.
do you expect a cycle of cuts?
Yeah, we do. I think it is harder to get those big cuts at this stage, at least starting with that. Obviously rates were at a higher level last year. You weren't as concerned on the inflation side of things. But I think this is a Fed that's going to proceed with a series of cuts.
What are you expecting for 2026? And is there a dividing line between what happens before May and what happens after May?
Yeah, we are still expecting that this is going to be a Fed that is data dependent. Obviously, they have to majority vote to have a policy reached. We still think it's a consecutive 5.
A consecutive 5.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think a whole lot changes when we get that new Fed chair?
I don't think necessarily. Yeah, we'll
Where does that
obviously.
thinking come from?
I mean, there is obviously a lot of pressure on them, but I think it depends obviously on who the chair will be. If it is someone like Governor Waller, market's very familiar with him. We know exactly how he thinks.
Governor Waller would be a super comfortable choice for Wall Street, I think, at this point.
Absolutely. He's someone that Wall Street really admires and backs at this moment. Even if they don't agree with his view, they think he's credible, and they think he can represent an independent Fed and not someone that's just doing White House bidding like maybe the president's own NEC director.
Can we just finish on the balance sheet? What do you think the approach of the new Fed chair will be to the balance sheet?
Yeah, it's really not gotten a lot of attention. It could be interesting if it's someone like Governor Waller. He's been a bit more hawkish on the balance sheet, allowing it to run off for longer. But I imagine for now it's just as is.
I've picked up on the same dynamic. I've been very surprised, sat here, that there hasn't been more attention on the balance sheet. If you listen to what the White House wants, it's not just lower rates, it's lower borrowing costs, it's lower mortgage rates. Which begs the question, if you're not going to get it through adjusting short-term rates, do you have to get it through other means?
Right. There's really not a lot of talk about that right now. But they are very focused on cuts, especially because they are issuing so much in the short end. So that really does depend on what the Fed rate itself is doing. Obviously, for consumers, 10-year mortgage rates, all of that matters more. But for now, if it's federal borrowing costs, that depends on what the Fed's doing in terms of rates.
Citi, appreciate it.
Thanks.
That duration is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and you imagine it might get a whole lot shorter.
Absolutely. And also, though, to Veronica's point, just thinking about the politics of all this going into the fall. If Citi is expecting some hotter prints to come in because tariff rates, we're going to see that pass through now, potentially with companies. At the same time, the Fed potentially, they think, is going to be on a cycle of cutting. How political is that think that they're only looking at the employment even though we're getting hotter CPI prints? That's going to be challenging.
Bond yields this morning higher by 3 basis points across the curve, up 3 on 2s to about 373. On 30s on my screen on the Bloomberg at the moment, up 3 also and back through 490. That's the price action. Let's get you an update on stories worldwide. Here is your Bloomberg brief. President Donald Trump taking game at NBC and ABC, saying they are, quote, the worst and most biased networks in history, adding that he would support the FCC in revoking their licenses. Elsewhere, the American Civil Liberties Union saying the Florida detention center, known as Alcatraz is being run illegally by state workers who are holding immigrants off the grid. The ACLU is suing a group of agencies involved in operating the facility. And finally, K-pop Demon Hunters topped the North American box office. According to Variety, the film is projected to gross $18 to $20 million over the weekend. It's a rare win at theatres for Netflix after it released the musical as a one-weekend-only sing-along event.
You're looking at me because you think I'm going.
No, I just have no interest in this whatsoever.
K-pop is cool. It might come up today at the White House, given you have the South Korean president visiting
singing at the
President Trump.
movies that I'm just not into at all. Like people, no. Like the sing-along stuff. What was that with the ABBA movie? What was that, Mamma Mia? And people started singing along to that stuff. No interest at all. All right, up next, setting you up for the day ahead. Plus, we'll catch up with Colin Martin of Schwab as investors price in a September rate cut. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
said 25% last year, I believe, of Google's code is AI generated. You have over 180,000 employees. Half that in the future?
I expect we will grow from our current engineering base even into next year, right? Because it allows us to do more, right? I think the opportunity space is also increasing. I just view this as making engineers dramatically more productive, getting a lot of the mundane aspects out of what they do, allowing them to spend on higher value-added tasks. But that means it's an accelerator. People will be able to do more, which means maybe we'll create new products, and hence we will need more people. At least in the near term, to me, it looks like we will expand engineering velocity, and that doesn't mean we're constrained in what we will do. We'll end up doing more as a company as well.
The Middle East and Africa regions are home to some of the biggest deals and fastest growth in the world. Vibrant resources and high-yield investment opportunities abound. I'm Jumana Versace. Join me on Bloomberg Horizon's Middle East and Africa for the stories, newsmakers, and insights shaping the decisions of traders across this exciting region.
You had heightened levels of volatility.
There's still room to maneuver.
Reduce the opportunities.
It allows you to increase significantly your net income.
Every trading day, only on Bloomberg.
Asia is at the forefront of some of the world's biggest stories.
And we're here, where the action starts in Sydney.
And in Tokyo, yet ahead as the global trading day begins.
The Asia Trade, weekdays only on Bloomberg.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Matt Miller at the Circuit de la Sarthe in Le Mans, and this is Bloomberg.
There's an enormous amount of pressure on the Fed right now that cannot be ignored. We haven't seen pressure like this since Johnson and Nixon. It's very significant, and it's more direct. It's more public. It puts the Fed in play in a lot of ways, both on the market and the public's eyes. So yeah, I'm very worried about it.
That was the former Kansas City Fed President Thomas Hoenig there on central bank independence. I have to say I prefer it public and direct than private and behind closed doors.
Yeah, well, this was the idea around President Nixon, Arthur Burns. They would have these meetings together, but no one knew how overt really Nixon was and direct he was to Arthur Burns and what he wanted to see. This is very transparent. We can all read and see what the president is saying about the Federal Reserve every single day.
We know exactly what we're getting. Bond yields are higher this morning by 2 or 3 basis points across the curve. Equities are lower by 0.3% on the S&P 500, down by about a third also on the Nasdaq 100. As we count you down to the opening bell, here's the trading diary. Today, Fed speak from New York President John Williams. Look out for that. The New York Fed president later on this evening. That's one to watch. As we look ahead to tomorrow, durable goods orders. Wednesday, the big one for earnings, results from Nvidia. Thursday, another round of jobless claims plus a read on GDP. And on Friday, core PCE and UMich consumer sentiment, for whatever that's worth at the moment, which feels like a political poll, a survey.
Right. Remember what Governor Waller said? He said, oh, yeah, that thing, that's sentiment.
It's how it's been treated, that thing. Let's stick with that thing. Inflation, the stock rally, retreating this morning as investors eye a September rate decision. Colin Martin of Schwab writing, a soft labour market is in the driver's seat when it comes to monetary policy expectations, but inflation concerns haven't dissipated. Colin joins us now for more. Colin, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. What changed for you after Friday?
Not too much. We were already pricing in a September rate cut. I mean, there's all these headlines and the markets go haywire about everything he says and doesn't say. If we go back to June, a majority of the FOMC participants were already expecting this. If we go back a few weeks ago, we were expecting a rate cut and probably a second one in December. It seems more likely now. I'd say Powell stopped short of confirmation, like what we got in 2024, in fact,
sure,
when he said, this is happening. But the door's clearly open. He mentioned that, we know that he thinks monetary policy is restrictive. It seems like the door's open to kind of ease it a little bit. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think much has changed because I think the Fed will continue to be data dependent going forward.
There appears to be a reaction shift, though, and that's important with regards to the debate data dependence. There seems to be a decreased sensitivity to inflation and maybe an increased sensitivity to the labour market. Is it fair there's been a bias shift at the Federal Reserve?
I think so, but I think the data supports that. We at Schwab, we kind of had the same shift as well, leading up to those pretty negative revisions that we got a few weeks ago, or almost a month ago now. We thought the labor market was pretty stable, with maybe some negative things, some cracks forming underneath the surface. That kind of pulled forward a lot more of those cracks, and maybe it wasn't as stable as we expected. So I think it's fair to focus more on the labor market than inflation. Yes, inflation is still above the Fed's target. It's been above the Fed's target for years. Yes, it's moving away from the target, at least over the past few months, but we're not sure it's going to necessarily re-accelerate from here. I think a lot of that, or some of that, does come from tariffs, but I won't use the T word, but it might be a one-time shift that the Fed might look through a little bit. I think they're still worried that we can see more price increases going forward, but unless we keep getting tariffs on tariffs on tariffs, that rate of change isn't going to be there in perpetuity.
But what makes you so worried about a 4.2% unemployment rate?
Not much. That's something that again, we have shifted our view a little bit. I was looking at that specifically as that sign of stability. I've kind of lost count now because we've shifted a little bit, but I think it's between 4% and 4.2% for 15, 16 months, something like that. It's remarkably stable. And even with those negative revisions, it was still kind of in the top end of that range. I think when you round it a little bit, it ticks a little bit higher. And it was more proof of the low-higher environment.
So why are they cutting?
Because I think
they're thinking about cutting.
They're thinking about cutting, haven't done it just yet. I think there's just things that are more concerning that the trend can worsen from here. It looks like if that trend we got over the past few months with non-farm payrolls, maybe that 4.0 to 4.2% range for the unemployment rate, maybe we get 4.3, 4.4, 4.5 over time. And I think that's going to be a little bit concerning for Fed officials.
Unleashed a super speculative rally, not just in equities, but in bonds too. We talked a lot about investment-grade credit spreads and multi-decade tights, high-yield spreads, 279 after Friday. How much tighter can credit spreads go in this country?
Well, not much. I mean, they can go. I mean, I've been pretty cautious about it for a while, but spreads have stayed in this really tight range. And if we look at that, we'll say 279 for high yield, all-time low or cyclical low, we'll call it, post-pandemic. We're looking at around 2.5%. So just kind of definitionally, maybe we see 20 or 30 basis points lower. I'm concerned, though. We've been cautious for a while.
What are you concerned about?
I'm concerned that I think we're seeing a lot of dynamics with supply and demand, people really reaching for yield, stock market optimism, a lot of demand in the private credit space. And I think when we get all this demand moving into an asset class, I think you lose price discovery, and it can't mask things that are going on underneath the surface forever. And we're seeing, I mean, defaults are still relatively high. They've been hovering, depending on Moody's or S&P, whichever data you want to use, in the 3, 4, 5% area for I think close to 2 years now. And that's well above levels we saw in 2021 when we saw spreads at these lows.
Do you find it odd that the chairman came out on Friday and said, I'm worried about demand? I'm not worried about inflation so much because actually I'm worried more about what's happening with demand. And then we saw spreads grind tighter.
I think, the Fed's view and then the market's just getting optimistic about the potential for rate cuts. We're worried about demand also. If we look at GDP, one of the things that we always focus on is personal consumption. And the first 2 quarters, I think on average, if you put them together, you're looking at around 1% or so annualized. And if we look at the past 3 years, it's closer to 2.5%. So I think that is something that probably is concerning for Fed officials. And we're concerned as well. And that's why we have that sort of defensive bias in terms of not taking too much risk with your portfolio, and the idea that we think yields of all maturities will probably fall a little bit further.
Well, let's get into that defensive posture. Where do you want to be across the yield curve? Where do you want to sit? Where's comfortable at the moment?
We're comfortable intermediate term. We like
you and everybody else.
Us and everybody else. But, there's risks on both ends, I think. On the short end, reinvestment risk is clearly here. And if we look at where a money market fund yield is right now, or a T-bill, 4% plus, if market expectations are correct, and who knows what we'll see over the next 12 to 15 months, we can see those yields closer to 3% next year. So we'd rather lock in a little bit. On the long end, though, inflation's still high. We still have fiscal concerns, and the term premium is relatively elevated, and we're worried that it can stay elevated given all the trade uncertainty, fiscal policy uncertainty, and the need for higher yields to attract those investors.
Do you see 4% on 10s as almost the floor then? How are you thinking about things? Even though you're going to see this big drop off at the front end, Where's the 10-year sitting?
Yeah, maybe a little bit below 4, maybe in the 3.75% to 4% range. We kind of give those ranges. If we look at what's going to pull yields significantly lower, we'd probably need a recession for that. In a recessionary environment, maybe 3.5% or less. But if we just get a moderation, which is kind of what we've seen lately, we think maybe just below 4%, which means a steeper yield curve and probably still attractive yields in our.
Would you expect issuance to tighten up even more? Duration just to shorten from the Treasury, given what you just described?
I think so. We know what Treasury wants to do. We know the concerns that Treasury and the whole administration has about the borrowing costs here, and we know what they can impact. And if we do get a lowering of interest rates because of either the mandate that suggests it or more people on the committee that are demanding it maybe more vocally, we'll probably see lower short-term rates, and we'll probably see the Treasury continue to take advantage of that.
Colin, it's good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. Colin Martin there of Schwab. That dance between Treasury and the Federal Reserve over the next year, the one to watch without a doubt.
Absolutely, and the president has made it pretty clear. He's like, if we're the ones paying net interest payments bigger than the defense budget, that those rates should be lower as the U.S. government is paying off those bonds.
First day back after vacation. Feel good?
Yeah, you know, it's a little sad. It's last week of August.
I know. You've got to take it in. Take it slowly. You know, I don't wish away summer. You know how a lot of people here wish away summer after Labor Day? It's sort of over. It's not over. You've got the whole of September.
Yeah, we should enjoy September.
Just
it's a good point.
Embrace September and the warm weather that's still to come. Bramo's doing just that. She's going to enjoy the final week of August. She'll be back with us next week. Conversation continues tomorrow. Peter Chia of Academy Securities will join us. We'll catch up with Marissa Adams of HSBC. We'll speak to Jim Bianco of Bianco Research and the wonderful, the brilliant Torsten Slok of Apollo. Stacked lineup tomorrow. Looking forward to catching up with you. For this morning, bond yields bouncing back by about 2 or 3 basis points across the curve. Equity futures just a little bit softer, negative by 0.3%. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. Thank you for choosing Bloomberg TV. This was Bloomberg Surveillance. It's the most fascinating time for the global economy in years, and our conversations are front and center.
We're stress testing consequential ideas, and investors around the world are scoring them in real time, helping to translate the policies from Washington into actionable ideas for Wall Street.
It's the morning call you actually want to be a part of.
Separating the signal from the noise, with some fun along the way.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Tune in to Bloomberg Business Week Daily.
We got to talk crypto.
From the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead.
What's the conversation around your company?
Bringing you insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy.
Planning very big things.
A new level of premium.
Plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens.
The floodgates of innovation are going to open up.
You can't fake passion. You either are or you aren't.
Bloomberg Business Week Daily, only on Bloomberg.
I think people are paying attention now to what we're doing in a way that wasn't happening 5 years ago. I think the convergence, not just of the hardware investments, but the AI investments in particular, have been the real watershed for us in helping people understand why we've always believed having these devices be wearable and having sensors and having context in the world around you has been so important. And it's like, oh yeah, of course, now that you realize there's gonna be a potentially super intelligent assistant that's operating there, you want it to have, for free, all the context on what you've heard, what you've seen, what you're doing, so it can help you the most out as you go about your day and try to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So we feel a lot of vindication on that. I think the question is, yeah, will it be us? Will it be a competitor? That depends on our execution and their execution. I have a lot of confidence that the paradigm that we're in right now, which has been stable for a long time, right? The phone that you all have in your pockets now is roughly the same as the phone you had in your pocket 4 or 5 years ago. There's not really a lot of new innovation happening at that scale. There is a lot of things. The phone is the greatest consumer electronic device ever built, and yet there's also a lot of things that we wish it could do better or different. And I think with AI and integrated context with the world around us, that becomes more and more obvious. So I'm very confident that the paradigm will shift in that time frame. And you all know the saying, we get a lot less done in 1 year than we think and a lot more done in a decade. That really is going to be true, I think, when it comes to these shifts.
In case case you missed it on the close.
Sweet Green, which has a kind of a similar business model to Kava, they're having some issues, and it's more about just the foot traffic. Maybe the price points are too high, or people have just moved on to other types of ways to feed themselves. What do you see?
We're not seeing anything underneath structurally in the business. If anything, we're seeing greater structural strength. In recent years, we've now underpriced CPI by 900 basis points. So again, our value scores continue to improve. We continue to make our food more accessible and really try and mitigate any of the impacts of, say, tariffs and not have to pass along to our guests.
There's been a lot of talk about how do you reimagine stores like this. What do you want your customer to do?
If you're in a hurry, we've got great digital channels. We've got 60 drive-through pickup windows. But if you want a great physical experience, you can have that walk the line experience, see the food, smell the food, interact with our team members. Our mission is to bring heart, health, and humanity to food. So we want to deliver that humanity in the four walls of our restaurants and have a great environment for you to enjoy your Mediterranean meal.
Don't miss the close, live every weekday.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute economic news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Michael McKee in Victor, Idaho, and this is Bloomberg.
A jolt of caffeine can boost its struggling coffee business. Plus, here come more tariffs. Stocks like Wayfair and Lazy Boy are on the move as President Trump targets furniture imports. Danny, what are you watching?
Well, I am watching NVIDIA. You have to, right, Matt? It's the big test of the week. When they release earnings on Wednesday, shares a little bit weaker this morning. Expectations, they are high as traders look for some reason to remain bullish on AI. We could see large moves in big tech. 40% of NVIDIA's revenue comes from other Mag 7 companies, Matt. So it is the risk of the week.
Yeah, definitely an important one to watch, the company to watch this week. This morning, though, Keurig Dr. Pepper has made an $18 billion move on Dutch coffee giant JDE Peet's. This will create the second largest coffee company in the world behind Nestle. You can see that Keurig Dr. Pepper shares are down 8%. The more interesting thing, I think, is that it's going to split its business, Danny, into two. So the soft drinks and energy drinks on one side and the coffee on the other.
Well, let's start with just that. And for more on the deal, we are joined by Bloomberg Managing Editor for Global Business, Shelly Banjo. Shelly, 7 years after the two came together, why would they split after this acquisition?
Yeah, it's essentially an undoing of the deal. This is what they do. These deal makers pull things together, break things apart, and this is sort of the situation that we're in now, where you have an industry that has only really gotten growth by raising prices, and the unit sort of growth is sort of flatlined or not, is not growing as fast. And so what are they to do now? Let's split the business. Let's see if we can get more customers that way.
They have had amazing success with brands like Dr. Pepper, which is, I'm told, neck and neck with Pepsi now, only behind Coca-Cola. And they're building with this a huge coffee business. They already own Green Mountain and a number of other brands. They make coffee cups for Krispy Kreme, for McDonald's, for Newman's Own. But I think it's interesting that they're going to split, and at this point, I wonder which one will offer more revenue, because until now, the soda business has been much bigger than their coffee business.
Yeah, I mean, the soda business is doing much better. I mean, coffee is not a great business to be in right now. You've got huge increases on pricing, huge issues with supply, and a number of people that are moving away from some of these coffee brands. And so their Keurig Dr. Pepper, the Dr. Pepper part of the Keurig Dr. Pepper business is actually doing a lot better.
All right, it's a fascinating deal that we're going to continue to talk about. Looks like the coffee company will have $16 billion in revenue, and the soda side, $11 billion. And as Shelly mentioned, the prices have been through the roof on the underlying asset in terms of coffee beans, right?
Yeah, and the good news is put it together, break it apart, the bankers get paid. So I'm sure
bankers get paid. All right, Shelly Banjo runs our company coverage here at Bloomberg. Let's get to the stock market's next big test. As Danny was pointing out, NVIDIA earnings Wednesday after the bell. Investors are hoping the results will soothe fears about AI spending and concerns of a brewing tech bubble. Joining us is Bloomberg Tech co-host Caroline Hyde. And wait, was anyone worried about AI spending? Isn't it?
That's so last week.
Were there fears about AI spending?
I mean, Palantir down for a few days. I mean, Friday seems to have made all of our short-term memory just lose a little bit like that. But we did have anxiety and actual impact on retail. exuberance around AI purchases of stocks related to it. And I wonder whether this will set the record straight in terms of getting retail back involved, whether we start to see NVIDIA as the key bellwether, almost rivaling the importance of a Fed decision in many ways. Look, it is 3% of global market capitalization in the world. And so when you're thinking about that and the supply chain impacts and the companies that are related, this is going to have a big sentiment check for many. And actually sentiment is, even though we've seen a sell-off in the stocks, analysts have been getting into this stock of late. You're seeing only one sell rating, and in fact, nine analysts alone last week upgraded their price targets for the company. Many are really feeling positive about the amount of ramp that we've seen with the Blackwell in particular. It's going to dial back the China anxiety that we've seen weighing on the stock for a while.
Well, to that point, the chip story, tech story, and politics ever more entwined. We learned Friday after the bell that the U.S. government would be taking that just nearly 10% stake in Intel. They say it's passive, but this is a president who's called the CEO into the White House to talk with him. What does this future of Intel look like with DC having a 10% stake?
And Bloomberg Intelligence is trying to see the pros and the cons in terms of, like, look, there's no governance impact, but realistically, are you going to see a change in demand for Intel's products going forward? Has the government taking a stake taken away any anxiety? Look, this company could end up, pushing itself out of business because it wasn't innovating quickly enough. Could you see the demand, which ultimately Lip-Bu Tan, the CEO, was questioning in the previous earnings, and that's why he said, look, I'm not going to do a build it and they will come. I need to see real demand for my 14A processors for me to keep innovating and pushing along to keep up with rivals. Well, now does the government impact mean that, yes, you will get a Qualcomm and Apple and even an NVIDIA looking for fabs to be made by Intel? Yes, you start to manufacture more in Ohio, but also you drive the innovation there and you make it a US success story. However, if you're a shareholder, are you diluted? And more broadly, does this just change the rules of the game in the way in which you think that Intel had been valued going forward? How much is there an anxiety about the way in which US government impact doesn't always be a fiduciary duty and doesn't always drive profitability?
Or a hope, right? Because President Trump is pretty good at persuading people to do things, right? SoftBank has come in with an additional $2 billion investment. I wonder who else could be supported by the government in this way. Kevin Hassett this morning said that the government may take stakes in other firms.
And it's whether or not you would ever see. They've already tried to push back that you wouldn't see it on a TSMC or a Samsung or a companies that have been persuaded to build it. Exactly, and they're the ones that actually they want to not have to rely on so much. You want to be able to rely on Intel as a US domestic manufacturer rather than TSMC. But what of Micron? What of other companies that have managed to show that they can innovate and they can spend their way to appease the government here in the United States to manufacture more? But who else and what other industry groups? I think this is wholly unprecedented. We are not in a time of war. We are not in a time of financial crisis. And yet still the national security impediment of global chip manufacturing and AI race, it makes it vindicated in some way with the U.S. government.
Yeah, I thought Bernstein put it well, though. Yes, they can use the money, but they also need customers. To the point that you're making, Caroline. Thank you so much for joining us. That is Bloomberg Tech co-host Caroline Hyde. Now, we're also going to get a number of retail earnings this week. They include Gap, Kohl's, Dollar General, Best Buy, and Dick's. Bloomberg consumer editor Emily Cohen joins us now. Emily, we heard from the giant last week, Walmart, who was able to keep prices low, but talked about tariffs increasing their prices every single week. If we get some of these smaller ones, are they going to be as resilient as we heard from Walmart?
I think that's the key question here. I think we learned a few things last week. We learned that the big retailers that can afford to keep prices low, that can negotiate good deals with their suppliers, are doing so. Also, a lot of these stores imported a lot of these goods before the tariffs went into effect. So what they saw in the last quarter is consumers are resilient. Also, where there are deals, shoppers will follow. So those are the kinds of themes that we're looking for this week. Are these retailers passing along the cost of tariffs yet, or is that still to come? And how are shoppers feeling? How are they doing? What are they gravitating towards? And those are the big questions.
Right, because the outlooks we get now are going to be all about back to school. For a lot of these companies, that's huge, right? Best Buy, for example. And the question isn't, I think, only are they going to pass along costs in terms of raised prices, but are they going to be offering discounts? Who's going to discount the most into September?
Yeah, and we heard from Walmart last week. They saw a strong back-to-school shopping season. Why? Probably because they had the best deals. So we'll be looking to see who else is touting those same wins or who else might have lost to other retailers.
Aren't you excited?
Yes.
Another week of sweet
Another
retail
week.
earnings. Emily Cohn runs our retail coverage for us here at Bloomberg News. Let's get a quick check on what's going on in terms of futures after rock and roll Friday. Really, we were up more than 1.5 on the S&P 500, almost 2% on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We added like 900 points.
Yeah, best day since May.
On the Dow on Friday. Now futures are down a little bit, but you can understand maybe a little bit of profit taking there. Also, maybe a bit of a reality check in terms of what's going on with the jobs market versus inflation.
Yeah, but we are 0.1% away from all-time highs. Kind of a bummer not to get there today and to see a little bit of
Well, you never know what happens throughout the day.
That is true.
Yeah.
We certainly could get a turnaround. This not helping, though, coming up on the show. Furniture stocks are plunging. The Trump administration investigating imports as part of its tariff regime. So we'll have that for you next. You're watching Bloomberg Open Interest.
Countdown to the Opening Bell is brought to you by Crypto.com, trusted by 150 million users globally.
At Morgan Stanley, old school hard work meets bold new thinking to help you see untapped possibilities and relentlessly work with you to make them real.
I earned my degree online at Southern New Hampshire University.
It's possible to raise a family, to pursue other things, and still further your education.
And you can do it too, from all over the country.
I live in Massachusetts.
I live in Texas.
I live in California.
I live in Pennsylvania.
I'm from Florida.
I'm from Virginia.
In North Carolina. And St. Louis. I'm from Tennessee.
And I'm from Georgia.
Regardless of where you live across the country, earn your degree at SNHU.
Visit snhu.edu.
Shopping, working, and relaxing online can attract various digital threats. To improve your protection against them, just turn on NordVPN. This cybersecurity app will block web trackers and malware-infected sites. It will also encrypt your internet traffic without losing a smooth connection. Get the deal now. NordVPN, cybersecurity built for every day.
Never thought this would happen. We got you.
When disaster threatens to put production weeks behind, call the team prepared to be there in minutes. Serve Pro like it never even happened.
When I started Walton Goggins Goggle Glasses, I had no idea what I was doing. But GoDaddy Aero does, using AI to build a logo, website, and social content. So I can let the world know if your goggles ain't Goggins, they don't belong on your noggins.
Why should you trade options rather than stocks? Because they offer higher returns, are cost-effective, and can actually reduce risk. Learn how in our new book. Get a free copy today at itsnotanoption.com. Itsnotanoption.com.
Losing the fear of looking foolish comes with age.
Who did you steal him from?
Losing your way in your own home doesn't. Confusion with time and place may be a sign of Alzheimer's.
Mom, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine.
Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's.
Let's get now to high interest. Look at what's making headlines around the world. The buyout firm Thoma Bravo will buy the call center software maker Verint Systems for $1.23 billion in cash. That's a 10% premium for the company. Thoma Bravo plans to combine it with another portfolio company that provides workplace management software. The deal is expected to close by the end of the year. And Vornado Realty Trust will buy an office condominium above Saks Fifth Avenue's flagship department store here in New York City for $218 million. Vornado expects to close the purchase of that property next month. By the way, it's 75% vacant right now. Furniture stocks are on the move in the pre-market after President Trump announced a tariff investigation on furniture coming into the U.S. That's hitting companies like Restoration Hardware and Wayfair that import a lot of their products. Furniture manufacturers with a large U.S. footprint, like Lazy Boy and Ethan Allen are having a different reaction, obviously gaining because they will have less price competition, Danny.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's going to have lazy boys. That's the future. For more on the impact on Wayfair in particular, as you showed, Matt, plunging in the pre-market trade, we're joined by Bloomberg Intelligence e-commerce analyst Poonam Goyal. I'm looking at FA screen on the Bloomberg terminal, Poonam, and it looks like about just under 40% of Wayfair's suppliers are located outside of the United States. Just how painful would a furniture-specific sectoral tariff be for Wayfair?
It would be painful because prices will have.
From the beating heart of global finance, economics and politics, and wherever newsmakers are moving markets, Bloomberg brings you conversations that allow for deep discussions and important insights. What do you think the future is for inflation? Is this a new normal? Are markets too optimistic? How do you worry about the things that are outside your control? How does the current fighting completely stop? I'm Francine Lacroix, and this is The Pulse, every weekday only on Bloomberg.
In case you missed it, on Bloomberg Open Interest.
When we look at our portfolio, we see an IPO pipeline that's the biggest since it's been in 2021.
In M&A and IPOs, we've actually had close to record performances in that space. We're going to have an interesting year.
We're having a lot more conversations around putting dates on calendars. I think we could see a very active second half of the year.
Don't miss Open Interest live weekdays.
Offering similar merchandise on your platform. And the one thing about being a marketplace is that consumers, it's not like buying milk, right? If the price of milk goes up, the consumer notices. But if you launch a new product, the consumer doesn't have a place to compare. How much was this before? So when you bring fashion into the mix, there is some price acceptance when it goes up through quality or just through a change in design.
What are the ballpark figures that you're hearing in terms of tariffs? I mean, how much does the U.S. want to extract from this industry?
I don't know the answer to that. I think your guess is as good as mine. We know there's a 20% tariff on Vietnam. China's higher. So, for this to be alarming, it probably needs to go above that 20% threshold because we're already there in most countries. But we haven't heard any numbers just yet.
So we don't know what it will be yet, and consumers are probably seeing this and also unsure. What kind of pull forward effect could we have then?
I think there will be some pull forward. I think there has been pull forward all year, quite honestly, which is why retail sales to some extent have held up so strong through the first half of the year. That said, there are deals. Like, when I go onto Wayfair right now, the Labor Day deals, they're pretty aggressive. So for an industry that's worried about prices going up on furniture, they're still offering quite significant deals to get the consumer to shop. And we do think the consumer has an appetite to still shop right now.
All right, Poonam, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Bloomberg Intelligence's Poonam Goyal on Wayfair stock sinking. One stock that's rallying in the pre-market is Intel. Matt, this just out from President Trump on Truth Social saying, I paid zero for Intel. It is worth approximately $11 billion. All of that goes to the USA, going on to say, I love seeing their stock price go up. It begs the question is if Intel is giving away this for zero, what are they getting in return? They say it's going to be a passive stake, but just how passive would you likely see the government?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's already called for the resignation of the CEO. Then he had a meeting with the CEO at the White House. Now they're doing this deal. And of course, the U.S. is putting billions of dollars in the hands of Intel. So it's not zero. It's just that it comes from President Biden's CHIPS Act that President Trump is using. Very interesting stuff and really interesting discussions have been had around that all last week, and we'll continue all this week. Let's take a look at what's going on in futures, because we had a big rally on Friday and we're down this morning.
Yeah, it was the biggest rally since May for this equity market, and we take a breather this morning. We are down about 1/3% across the indices. Matt, as I mentioned, we are 0.1% away from an all-time high, a dovish injection from Powell that was surprising to many people, allowing this market to rally. At least it was on Friday, not necessarily today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're still looking, though, at like 85, 86% chances of a rate cut in September. That's what that rally was all about. That hasn't changed much. Coming up, we're going to talk to Keith Lerner of Truist. He upgrades U.S. small caps, which had an absolutely massive rally. I think the Russell was up 3.9% on Friday. He joins the show next. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
Countdown to the Opening Bell is brought to you by Crypto.com, trusted by 150 million users globally.
At Principal Asset Management, we see things from a different point of view. With depth in distinct capabilities, our investment teams uncover opportunities across asset classes. Together, your vision and our depth of perspective helps you implement all-weather strategies. It's this depth that powers portfolios and sets you up for success. Principal Asset Management. Actively invested.
Only the ServiceNow platform connects every corner of your business, putting AI to work for people.
HR?
Yeah.
IT?
Yeah.
R&D?
Yep.
OMG?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
That's the department I work in.
All right. Enough of that.
My heart is yours, dear, and your nights are only lonely, and I promise this forever. Just take my hand. My heart is yours, dear, and just take my hand, darling.
You have big visions of what you want to achieve in the next few years. What is the plan the next 5 years?
It's a very ambitious plan. I have a friend who once told me that the World Cup was like an IPO for Qatar, and I believe this was, thanks to God, that this was a very successful IPO, and it's been oversubscribed, and we have seen the growth in many sectors after that. Basically, Qatar is trying to work on a transformation plan where we transform our economy into more being diversified, with a diversified base internally. And we've been talking about this for the last 25 years, and we've been working toward that objective.
Truist upgrading U.S. small caps to neutral from less attractive. Co-CIO and Chief Market Strategist Keith Lerner cites valuations, improved earnings trends, and technical signals. Similarly, RBC Capital Markets notes that small caps tend to outperform larger stocks when economic growth is below average. Truist Keith Lerner joins us now. Keith, how much of this is about fundamentals versus Friday getting dovish injection from Jay Powell?
Yeah, well, Danny, great to be with you and Matt. It's a combination of many factors. We follow a weighted the evidence approach, and we already saw before Friday things started to change. So the first condition is we know they've underperformed by a lot. Look at the last 3 years on a rolling basis to large caps. They've underperformed the S&P 600 by about, by about 40%. So you have a condition of being oversold. Valuations have been cheap. That hasn't mattered. But what's been different over the last few months, we're starting to see those earning trends, forward earning estimates move higher, and that's pretty broad-based. We can speak more about that. You throw on top of that the rate cut, which I think on the margin is positive, and also somewhat appreciated is the one big beautiful bill had some real cash incentives for tax rates for these higher leverage, more interest rate sensitive names as well. And then finally, the technicals. The underlying trends are positive on an absolute basis, and then on a relative basis, we saw a breakout on Friday. You put that all in the mix, at least on the margin, we would say you should be somewhat less negative. And even though we had a big Friday up move, if you zoom out a bit, they've still underperformed by a very wide margin the last few years.
So when we talk about the Russell 2000, for example, I always hear that only about half of them make money. I'm not sure if that's 60% or 40%, but in that ballpark, right? Where do you see the quality? Where do you see the money makers inside that index? Is it financials? Is it industrials? I mean, who's doing well?
Yeah, well, and you're right. And that's why I think longer term, we still like large cap, that secular technology theme in general. But on the margin, I think we have to acknowledge a shift in that way of the evidence. And we've kind of focused more on the S&P 600, which tends to have a earnings quality and a factor to it. But to your point, what's interesting, when we look below the surface, even though it's a lot less weight, small cap tech and communication services are seeing those earnings move up. But also the two biggest sectors within the index, financials and industrials, are also moving high. I think on the financials, probably a beneficiary somewhat of a little bit of steeper curve. And let's not forget, we probably will have a bit more of a pickup in M&A, which should also be supportive for at least the trade in small caps.
Well, Keith, even just that, I mean, it's a small cap index that feels like it's been hollowed out by private capital, about small companies staying private for longer or even being taken private. There was another Thoma Bravo one just today. Is the quality of the small cap index, has it been declining?
Absolutely. And that's why we're looking at this more of a trade, because to your point, I mean, you know, not only is private equity buying these companies are staying private, and when they come to the market, they're coming when they're bigger. And also, your team over at Bloomberg did a great analysis with the Mag 7 and showed that they have purchased or had M&A or taken over these smaller companies by a clip of about 800 companies since they've come public. So you think about that, and then also with small caps, once they hit a threshold, they get moved up. So that's great. But you know, once you become a winner, you kind of cut those winners. So again, that's why longer term we think secular growth in large caps makes sense. But on the margin, especially with how much outflows we've seen out of small caps, we think it makes sense for a little bit of catch up.
All right. Keith, stay with us. We have much more to discuss, including some of the large caps that you mentioned. Keith Lerner of Truist. Quick.
I'm David Weston. Join me each week on Wall Street Week for stories of capitalism from business, markets, economics, tech, and climate. We go on the road for a look at what lies behind the headlines of today. and what will likely be the headlines tomorrow.
We need more transparency.
Oil and gas is still important.
They said every citizen should be investing in the market.
Accelerate progress in all fields of science.
Watch Wall Street Week right here on Bloomberg. More than what you need to know, it's what you need to think about.
Why do the biggest names in business choose Bloomberg Television?
That's a great question.
It's a very good question.
Interesting question. Good question.
Great question.
I so appreciate that question.
You certainly ask interesting questions.
Bloomberg Television. Top experts, great questions.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute energy news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Joanna Bersecci in Vienna, and this is Bloomberg.
Asia is at the forefront of some of the world's biggest stories. I'm Sherrian in Tokyo.
And I'm Heidi Stroud-Watts here in Sydney, where the trading day begins. We're here in the center of all the action to get you set up with the numbers, news and knowledge you need for the day ahead.
The demand is indeed recovering.
We've been waiting for this.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to backtesting session. I'm gonna be doing Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to backtesting session. I'm gonna be doing fine.
Joe.
Like, what do they know?
Banyak. So 3 weeks ago, I got my
Oh ada, aku pengen mati tapi dijadiin jalan sama aku. Mas Dito, pas renang di laut pernah disengat ubur-ubur. Oh ada, aku pengen mati tapi dijadiin jalan sama aku. Mas Dito, pas renang di laut pernah disengat ubur-ubur. Wah pernah tuh. Wah dia udah ngomong pernah, aku gak mau. Oh renang disengat ubur-ubur. Ada tawon pokoknya kita baikon. Ada sarang kita bakar. Enggak, aku benci tawon.
Serang dia.
Sekarang orang mau ngeluh. Ya. Sekarang AI di bidang fotografi ada. Oh, AI di bidang video ada. Bahkan AI di bidang analyze health juga ada. Berarti bukan nggak mungkin akan ada robot tuh. Ya. Partnerku, sejawatku itu udah operasi orang ditemani robot, Pak.
Iya.
Operasi lutut, iya pakai robot, udah pakai robot.
Buset.
Jadi bukan nggak mungkin kalian juga diganti robot. Terus kalian kalau nggak punya spesialisasi, nggak mau belajar, nggak mau adaptasi, kalian ngeluh sama keadaan. Tidak bisa. Kalian tidak akan bisa mencegah perkembangan teknologi kecuali kalian belajar. Nah masalah kan orang kadang arogan, sudah ngerasa pintar nggak mau belajar. Jadi bagiku kesuksesan orang itu cuma karena dua. Dia ngejar amalan ibadah non-stop sama ya belajar. Belajar apapun ya, belajar bisa dari sekolah, kuliah, orang lain, seminar, workshop. Terus diterapkan ke dirinya. Entah dia mau jadi profesional atau jadi bisnismen. Atau memang jadi pengajar. Ya kalau dia udah nggak mau belajar, entah itu dari sekolah atau informal ya udah, ya dia akan stuck di situ terus.
Kalau cara belajar lo tuh kayak apa sih Mas? Kayak apakah lo tuh punya mentor atau lo emang fully sendiri aja atau
ya
gimana sih?
Kita kan punya buku lewat Periplus ya sama Gramedia. Terus kita juga punya akses buku sekarang apalagi dari Amerika 0. Ya kan? 0 ntar lagi gosipin dulu. Buku juga 0. Ya kita tinggal baca buku di akses media tuh baik banget, e-book, jurnal tuh baik banget. Tapi kan orang nggak mau baca. Orang lebih seneng dibacain di TikTok tuh.
Iya.
Ya kan? Padahal ilmu itu banyak. Kamu dengan membaca, kamu bisa banyak obrolan. Dan membaca itu tidak harus sekolah. Kamu bisa menemukan peluang-peluang baru dalam bacaan. Kayak contoh kamu baca data di Statista ya. Minimal itu Statista. Terus kamu tahu, oh ternyata sepatu ini laku di sini ya. Kan kamu punya ide akhirnya. Ya contohnya gini, gimana kamu tahu kamu ayam goreng itu sukses di daerah A kalau kamu nggak tahu peminat ayam goreng di daerah itu. Asal gitu kamu jual ayam goreng karena passion mau jual ayam. Kan belum tentu sukses.
Menarik.
Ya, belajar.
Dulu deh.
Terlalu banyak informasi. Iya sih, tapi kalau misalnya orang kita sekarang buku dibacain,
iya,
video diceritain,
nah itu kan ngeselin kan?
Iya.
Ini cuma kritis aja. Menurutku kritisnya bukan fokus, tapi malas. Orang sekarang tuh kritisnya mereka malas, bukan fokus, tapi malas. Memang laziness saja. Padahal ada sebuah quote, Ketika kamu punya talenta itu akan mati kalau kamu nggak konsisten untuk melatih talenta itu.
Iya, benar.
Jadi talent itu akan kalah sama konsisten. Bahkan orang yang nggak punya talent itu kalau konsisten melatih, dia akan bisa mengalahkan orang yang bertalenta yang males. Males itu paling parah, coy.
Kelas.
Contoh, dia disuruh baca nggak mau, maunya dibacain. Ya, dia disuruh jalan kaki untuk ke Indomaret terdekat 500 meter, nggak mau, maunya naik motor. Akhirnya keropos tulangnya. Disuruh olahraga nggak mau, males. Makan, obes, males. Mak disuruh ayo makanan, ayo kan gampang banget. Kamu masih muda, umur berapa kamu?
30.
Nah, kurangin nasi setahun, males. Ya kan? Disuruh tidur lebih awal, males. Disuruh ngeliat video panjang, males. Disuruh nulis, males. Apa yang dilakuin? Kemudahan, easiness itu yang akhirnya membuat orang ketergantungan dan dependable pada teknologi. Dan akhirnya teknologinya memanfaatkan mereka sebagai number sebagai consumer. Ya sekarang kan tinggal pilihan orang. Kalau dibilang, kamu jangan ngerokok, males udah enak, ya udah. Males kan? Males untuk berhenti, males untuk berubah. Nah, laziness itu yang membuat orang akhirnya nggak mau gerak. Entah itu di bidang apa, akhirnya dia nggak growing up. Nah, ketika ada generasi bawah nih, yang ambisius, ya habislah mereka. Ya sekarang, aku lihat generasi alpha anakku, aku lihat teman-teman anakku, sudah bisa bahasa Inggris, udah bisa renang, udah bisa hitung-hitung, udah bisa analisis. Bahkan sekelas main bola FIFA aja, FIFA Mobile, overan aku udah 114. Yang dilawan tuh anak SMA. Nah sekarang bayangin, berarti kan generasi alpha, kalau di-maintain privilege yang gila, anggap privilege-nya kayak bapak, habislah generasi tua. Sekarang coba lihat, generasi paling nganggur sekarang umur berapa? 35 ke atas.
35, ya.
35 ke atas. 35, 36, 40, 45. Ya kan? Karena apa? Ya karena mereka nggak mau belajar di masa muda. Nggak mau belajar, nggak mau upgrade ilmu. Dan mereka ada terjebak dengan 9 to 5, enak, nggak mau belajar. Padahal belajar itu cuma baca. Dibacain, video dirangkumin. Buset, bahkan ada di akun Twitter namanya intinya deh.
Iya, benar.
Ngerangkumin konflik orang.
Benar.
Sudah konflik, dirangkumin.
Distorsi informasi juga ada pasti di situ.
Ya kan, sampai yang paling mana tuh YouTube-nya Tirta, itu clippernya banyak.
Ya,
pas ku tanya kenapa clipper banyak, clipper tuh bukan aku yang bayar, karena memang orang pengen lihat clipper. Bahkan ada yang komen, Tirta kok dukung rokok ya? Padahal kalau dilihat full, itu aku menentang. Tapi yang di-cut adalah yang terkesan mendukung. Dia aja komen berdasarkan clipper. Disuruh nonton YouTube, tonton dong YouTube-nya. Ogah.
Gitu
nah,
aja.
terus kamu berharap
Gitu
Indonesia
aja.
akan emas nih 2045.
2045 kosong lagi.
Makanya kan aku bilang, Indonesia emas bagi 2% orang. Bagi 2% orang. 98% enggak, menurutku.
Siapa 2% itu?
Ya 2% yang mau belajar. Karena kan entrepreneur, ya orang-orang yang gila, orang-orang yang 2%, 3% ini kan gila growth. Sementara 98%, kalau tidak belajar, tidak belajar ini, bukan Indonesia emas, 98% ini kemungkinan akan menjadi data yang digunakan oleh perusahaan sebagai komoditi top. Ya tergantung kalian di 2045 mau jadi pelaku bisnis, pelaku pekerja, atau hanya sebagai market yang diolah. Sekarang kalau punya data tuh enak. Skincare contohnya. Kita lihat data. Yang paling laris apa di Indonesia? Serum pemutih. Semua cewek pengen putih. Ya udah jual aja serum putih. Semua beli kan? Ya udah. Selisih 1.000 aja dibeli. Ya itu contoh. Jadi buat teman-teman ya kalau nggak mau belajar ya resiko Anda. Dalam waktu 5-6 tahun lagi kekhawatiran yang dikhawatirkan orang digantikan teknologi itu beneran terjadi. Ya tapi kan AI nggak punya emosi. Ya kan orang bilang. Loh justru karena nggak punya emosi, kita bisa membuat decision making untuk menyingkirkan bias.
Benar.
Iya. Yang paling parah kemarin di Twitter. Di X ini sempat viral Grok.
Iya.
Ya Grok. Beri eksperimen gila, terus jawabin sesuka hatinya.
Iya betul.
Berdasarkan habitnya X. Akhirnya sampai dia dikontrol kan. Itu baru Grok. Kau bayangkan 5 tahun lagi kayak apa?
Iya benar. Ini teknologi baru-baru sekarang aja udah kayak gitu.
Baru itu. Karena apa ya? AI itu AI yang untuk chat GPT dan karena itu kan mengumpulkan data. Semakin banyak orang, ini LCD-nya mati. Semakin banyak orang.
Udah nggak ngikutin ini kita.
Karena ya aku ada sedikit adik-adiknya. Jadi kalau ada distraksi ketahuan.
Iya.
Jadi kalau misalkan AI itu kita tanya terus, ya dia tambah pinter dong.
Iya.
Nah, sama kayak manusia, ditanya terus tambah pinter. Gitu. Nah ini kan kalau yang kulakuin sekarang kan adalah menyadarkan biar orang tuh baca. Tapi kan Etienne lihat orang disuruh sekolah nggak mau, disuruh kursus nggak mau, baca buku nggak mau. Oh ya udah. Ya endingnya kan kalian hanya membuat orang-orang seperti saya tambah kaya. Dan it's not my mistake dong.
Iya.
Benar.
Ya bukan salahku dong.
Benar.
Bukan salahku. Orang gini, laundry cuci sepatu muncul karena
ada kebutuhannya.
Bukan. Ya karena orang malas cuci sepatu.
Iya benar. Kayaknya gara-gara erupsi.
Viralnya. Viralnya.
Bapak ngikutin nggak tadi? Bapak ngikutin
Iya, betul, itu betul. Viralnya kan karena erupsi.
Iya.
Kebutuhan. Sebenarnya kan bisa nyuci kalau abu sendiri, tapi males.
Benar.
Cuci motor muncul karena orang males nyuci sendiri. Karena kebutuhan waktu, Dok. Nah, ya udah. Tapi kalau kita buka laundry cuci sepatu di Jerman itu nggak laku.
Coba nyuci sendiri.
Iya. Kita jual mobil di Jerman nggak akan selaku di Indonesia. Karena di sana transport umum luar biasa.
Yeah.
Di Jepang, orang malah, kenapa sepatu laku di Jepang? Karena orang hobi jalan kaki. Ya jadi kan ribet kan kalau ngomongnya seperti ini kan. Nah itu makanya aku bilang.
Tahu banyak yang harus diperbaikin juga.
Laziness dan procrastination yang hobi menunda. Harusnya hari ini ditunda besok, ditunda besok, ditunda besok. Deadliner, terutama editor video. Jadi harusnya ngedit hari ini ditunda-tunda, kumpulin edit 15 jam sebelumnya. Revisinya banyak.
Bener sih. Ayo lihat keliling. Saya lihat nih.
Ya makanya jobnya cuma segitu-segitu doang kan.
Kenal lagi.
Orang menunda tuh karirnya segitu-segitu doang. Karena dia ngerasa cukup. Dia hanya menggunakan alasan freedom, damai. Padahal sebenarnya dia malas saya, makanya dia nunda kerjaan.
Freedom, damai, nunda kerjaan. Terlalu banyak hal yang dikorbankan untuk damai itu. Sadar. Enggak, gua nunjuk kamera, Bi.
Aku tuh lebih suka kerja cerdas. Misalkan kerja kita 9 to 5, 7 jam. Kerjaan tak padetin 4 jam. 3 jamnya gabut buat relax. Aku gitu. Tapi aku nggak mau disuruh membuktikan kerja lebih lama untuk bahwa aku keren gitu. Enggak, aku ya 7 jam, 7 jam. Kalau misalnya aku kerja lebih cepat 4 jam, ya jangan ditambahin.
Berarti ngeset priority berarti?
Iya, settle prioritasnya ada.
Gimana ngeset priority ala Bapak Tirta?
Nomor 1, nggak boleh ada yang ganggu-gugat waktuku sama anak. Ya, jadi contoh kemarin ada meeting pas barengan anak. Nggak mau aku, nggak bisa. Weekend buat keluarga. Dan nomor 1, family. 2, diri sendiri. Jadi waktuku buat olahraga, waktuku buat ibadah, waktuku buat liburan itu nggak boleh diganggu. Ketika kerjaan, 3 ini nggak bisa diganggu. Semakin aku tua, aku malah nggak punya teman yang banyak. Temannya cuma belasan. Tapi ya itu aja. Temanku rata-rata di Jogja. Kalau yang di Jakarta tak anggap teman untuk
bisnis.
Karena rata-rata orang di Jakarta, aku nggak ngejudge ya, tapi rata-rata orang di Jakarta karena kota pekerja dan kota metropolitan tuh memandang orang dari oportunis. Kamu punya apa, aku punya apa, ya nggak salah, simbiosis saja. Tapi kalau karena aku dulu kuliah di Jogja dan aku sekolah di Solo, ya teman-temanku di Solo Jogja tuh teman-teman yang tahu aku dari merintis. Jadi memang tak anggap buat teman. Konco-kontol ya, betul gitu.
Mas, tapi kan lo tuh sebenarnya udah achieving so many things ya. Kayak gue kalau misalnya jadi lo juga, apalagi ya yang gue lakukan karena semuanya udah.
Ya itu sekolah, karena sekolah itu unlimited. Kamu punya gelar, tapi ya setelah gelar itu didapat, ya udah, that's it. Itu bukan berarti kamu sudah paling pintar di dunia, enggak. Kamu akan dikalahin sama generasi muda yang mau sekolah.
Tapi life purpose lo tuh apa sih, Mas?
Apa?
Lo punya nggak sih kayak purpose dalam hidup, apa satu hal yang pengen lo achieve?
Oh ada, aku pengen mati tapi dijadiin jalan sama aku. Jadi ada gedung Tirta itu atau jalan Tirta itu kan keren.
Jalan Tirta.
Jadi ketika tiap anak cucuku lewat, wah keren nih ada Tirta, peng citot gitu. Jadi lewat namanya gedung Tirta, di gedung Totot gitu.
Boleh. Boleh.
Lo kan itu. Jadi kan punya
rumah lu di mana?
Gedung di mana? Gedung jalan mana? Jalan Citotot nomor 39.
Aduh.
Kan seru kan?
Seru.
Nah itu goal purpose saya tuh meninggalkan legasinya tuh video itu kan akan tersebar 5, 10, 15, 20 aset digital kan. Yang itu. Itu kan muncul terus. Video itu kan muncul terus.
Dorong mas.
Nah, kan urusan editor. Urusan editor.
Benar.
Nih. Biar kau ada kerjaan. Ya. Tapi dari situ kan jadi kalau kita lihat kan pengennya tuh ya ketika namanya jadi gedung ya. Jadi ketika anak lewat atau cucu lewat itu tahu oh bapaknya jadi gedung. Tapi ya nggak masalah sebenarnya aset
dikutuk. Jadi gedung. Bapak jadi gedung.
Lama bapak jadi gedung. Apa dikat? Ngomong apa kamu?
Berani Anda.
Ya, jadi kalau menurutku goalnya tuh seperti itu. Tapi cuman pengen belajar aja. Jadi pengen punya uang dan akhirnya belajar lagi, pengen punya uang belajar lagi, pengen uang belajar lagi. Jadi memperkaya ilmu aja. Kalau nggak dari kuliah ya course, fellowship itu kan bisa.
Dengarnya kemarin abis Virgin Marathon.
Iya.
Disuruh deh tadi. Lagi seru. Lagi seru.
Aneh banget ya.
Iya.
Nah, jadi kalau dari saya yang maraton itu lebih ke karena dulu aku nggak mau.
Tetap dijawab lagi. Kayak gimana?
Jadi dulu aku nggak mau maraton. Takui itu emang aku nggak mau maraton. Tapi kembali lagi aku orang kurios. Aku melihat other people experience. Ternyata banyak orang yang mengatakan maraton itu bisa mengubah visi dalam hidup. Kayak apa nih kok bisa? Padahal orang kalau maraton tuh pasti massa otot akan berkurang, terutama di trapezius, bahu sama tricep dan bicep. Jadi penasaran, ya udah tetap dijalani. Ternyata benar di maraton itu kita bertarung tuh sama diri sendiri. Kaki udah bilang sakit di KM 32 tapi diterusin, terus finish. Terus akhirnya persiapan maraton yang aku lakuin buat BTN itu sebenarnya buat untuk persiapanku ke Berlin maraton di September. Jadi dari maraton itu lebih ke ternyata ya diri sendiri itu yang akan bisa menghambat atau justru mendukung kita di masa depan. Ya dari situlah aku tahu bahwa ternyata aku olahraga tuh buat happiness. Jadi kalau aku stres aku olahraga, aku gabut aku olahraga. Jadi kalau orang lain olahraga kan buat sehat, buat bugar, jaga kesehatan, maka mereka 3 kali seminggu. Aku tiap hari.
Karena buat happiness.
Buat happiness, kan beda-beda.
Yeah.
Stress release-nya kamu mungkin makan, stress release-mu mungkin mancing, stress release-mu main burung berapa?
Enggak. Tahu juga orang main burung begini.
Ada yang mikir ke sana, Mas.
Ya, jadi akhirnya dari situ stress release-ku kebetulan olahraga. Jadi kan namanya pebisnis dan 9 to 5 kerja, apalagi hidup di bolak-balik karena aku Jogja Jakarta tuh pasti high level stress. Makanya aku untuk mengontrol stres dengan olahraga. Gak bisa kalau enggak olahraga. Karena ya itu udah jadi habit. Kalau enggak tuh stres otaknya. Dan aku tuh sudah berkonsep sampai rumah tuh harus happy. Entah itu rumah yang di Jakarta atau rumah yang di Jogja.
Ya.
Seru ya punya 2 rumah gitu.
Enggak, ada 3 di Solo juga ada.
Ada 3.
Di Boyolali juga ada, di Bandung juga.
Mobil 16 tadi bilang, 16.
Nah itu 2 yang atas nama sisanya diecast.
Alah, bisa aja.
Diecast itu. Misalnya diecast, sisanya punya bapak, bukan punya saya. Privilege saya.
Berarti sekarang lo lagi persiapan buat yang ke Berlin.
Berlin Marathon ya.
Apa persiapan yang lo lakuin yang beda sama persiapan maraton?
Makanku baik banget. Makanku baik. Aku tuh nggak mau pokoknya dari pas aku persiapan BTN Jakim, ternyata massa ototku kurang 3,5 kilo. Jadi itu kelihatan. Akhirnya aku ngerasa oke, berarti makan. Ternyata ada positif impact ya si maraton. Aku tuh bisa makan sesuka hatiku dalam waktu 7 kali sehari. Tapi makanya nggak bisa kalau yang gorengan. Jadi ayam sehari itu 7, 6, 8. Yang paling parah
sama kandangnya.
Tadi Hakka dimsum ya. Hakka dimsum tuh aku 6 porsi.
6 porsi.
Setengah 1.000. Tapi yang paling parah kalau di nasi Padang ini terjadi di pagi sore ya. Tapi pagi sore yang di Kemang. Sampai hafal orangnya.
Dokter ya, ayam 3, rendang 1, nasi 1 ya.
Datang. 180.000 sendiri. Jadi ternyata aku tuh suka makan. Jadi dengan aku Virgin Marathon, dengan aku pelatihan maraton itu kan surplus kalori harus banyak ya. Karena kalori harian terbakar karena endurance tuh banyak banget. Itu menunjang hobiku yang makan. Dan aku tuh habitku bukan yang barang mewah. Biasa, barangnya sama aja. Cuman aku bisa makan enak. Dan ternyata ya inilah aku bilang tips buat anak muda tuh, kebahagiaan kecilku tuh makan enak. Paham ya?
Yeah.
Kebahagiaan kecilku tuh bukan dapat uang, oke. Itu kebahagiaan besar sih. Terus target punya mobil enggak. Kebahagiaan yang kurasa tiap hari itu kalau bisa makan itu bisa happy. Jadi makan happy, terus olahraga itu happy. Jadi kebahagiaan kecil itu yang membuat aku nggak gila secara otak tuh normal. Makanya kalau teman-teman suka makan ya lakuin olahraga aja.
Olahraga.
Tapi makannya benar-benar nggak serampangan kayak contoh aku nggak makan seblak. Aku supaya bisa makan enak, aku tuh nggak makan yang fast food, nggak makan processed food. Aku juga nggak makan yang makanan angin ya, snack itu enggak. Yang aku makan tuh, yang aku makan ya daging. Privilege terbaik kalau kaya tuh bisa makan wagyu tiap 2 hari.
Iya.
Hari sekali wagyu.
Iya.
Ya itu kan nggak kena pajak. Gimana tuh? Diukur kan?
Nggak usah.
Terus makan ke ini Haidelao sendiri, terus juta. Terus habis itu Momo Paradise kan 1,2 juta.
Ikut dong.
Tapi ada plot twist ya. Jadi ada bagus nih momen. Karena aku tuh takut kalau anakku itu mendapatkan hal yang nggak maksimal. Jadi aku tes. Aku ajak anakku itu makan di warung ayam bakar biasa. Sama ada namanya Teochew Sinyo. Itu warung makan yang aku makan dari aku kuliah. Sama Tora-Tora. Itu warung makan yang aku makan dari kuliah. Wis ngemper lah. Terus aku juga ngajak dia itu bisa sushi hero tiap hari. Spam. Jadi seminggu sushi hero. Bayangin aku ngajak anakku sushi hero terus tiap hari. Yang belinya sushi tangga.
Bayangin guys.
Jadi ini bayangin dulu ya. Jadi anakku itu tiap siang atau sore kalau pulang sekolah makannya itu sushi hero salmon tangga. Salmon sushi. Surut tiap hari.
Bukan yang
Tapi ada satu minggu dia makan yang ayam bakar. Nah, aku tanya lah dia lewat telepon. Kan aku di Jakarta telepon. Tiba-tiba dia itu ngajak satu rumah ke pecel lele. Duh, kok kamu makan pecel lele? Karena enak, Pak. Jadi ternyata anakku juga kayak aku pas ini. Dia merasakan seenak-enaknya sushi lebih enak ayam bakar. Ini lucu nih beneran. Padahal aku bilang, kan sushi lebih proper.
Enggak ya Pak, lebih enak ayam bakar.
Jadi akhirnya si sang anak pun merasa bahwa memang lebih enak ayam bakar. Jadi ternyata kebahagiaan kecil itu tidak ditentukan dari mahalnya makanan. Comfort food-nya anakku tuh ayam bakar. Comfort food-ku tuh soto. Ya, cuman kalau kebahagiaan kecil tuh seneng aja ke Bisteka makan sendiri. Ya kan, Le Quartier makan sendiri, ya kan. Jadi pakai celana pendek beneran, pakai celana pendek. Kalau enggak celana pendek terus ke Sushi Hero beli langsung brit. Terus kalau enggak ke Momo Paradise gabut habis gym. Itu 600, 700 seporsi.
Disebut.
Makanan termahal aku makan itu baru di The Meat Guy punya Dims. Itu 5.500.000 satu porsi.
UMR lah ya sekali makan ya.
Nah itu privilege-nya tuh di situ. Aku bukan tipikal orang yang makan tuh bukan yang beli tas mewah enggak. Aku lebih suka kayak apa sih makanan 6 juta tuh. Nah, terus yang
apa, Dok?
Sama aja ternyata nyoba. Sama, cuman bapakku bercanda, kamu makan steak 4 juta sama 5 juta, itu di plastik aja. Tapi tidak ada bisa mengalahkan feel makan soto. Kalau di Jakarta tuh kalian kalau di Pasar Santa makannya tuh si soto Mbak Ning.
Soto Mbak Ning.
Kalau soto agak upgrade dikit, soto Bangkong.
Itu apa? Soto bening apa?
Soto bening. Aku nggak suka soto yang santan. Suka tapi tidak begitu suka ya. Bukan berarti nggak enak. Suka tapi lebih suka soto bening tanpa kecap. Ya, comfort foodku itu. Jadi kalau setiap minggu aku harus makan itu. Sama yang comfort food kedua Wagyu tadi. Iya. Makanya aku seneng banget ketika kemarin di Twitter ada bilang dia dapat gaji pertama 4 juta. Terus dia akhirnya bisa makan di WS Warung Steak. Terus dihujat sama netizen lain. Wah, Warung Steak itu bukan steak. Ente ngeselin. Iya, karena mungkin kemenangan kecil dia tuh bisa makan di warung steak. Dan itu comfort food dia. Dan itu tidak boleh disalahin. Terus pasti ada yang les. Comfort foodku seblak. Aku tahu ada mau debat. Sama pentol. Kalau di Jogja pentol terenak bagiku tuh di dekat Bank Mandiri Jakal. Itu enak. Hafal. Sampai pedagangnya hafal. Pokoknya aku dari dulu makan di situ. Nah itu contoh kemenangan-kemenangan kecil yang aku rayain kalau misal berbisnis. Nah dengan maraton ada kaitannya.
Makasih ya Mas. Makasih udah dibantu.
Karena bisa makan seenak jidat.
Benar.
Tanpa takut mengalami overweight. Karena kebakar buat karbo dan kebakar buat endurance besoknya nge-gym.
Tapi kalau yang gemuk-gemuk kayak saya pengen lari gimana, Dok?
Ya nggak makan karbo. Yang buat gemuk itu karbo, Mas. Karbo kebanyakan disimpan jadi fat.
Nah kemarin tuh saya sempat nyoba mau makan malam. Coba makan malamnya buah aja. Tapi kok makin lapar ya?
Ya karena buah kan fruktos. Kalau mau malamnya nggak lapar, makanya sayur. Sayur sama protein. Yang buat gemuk itu bukan protein, yang buat gemuk itu adalah karbo. Jadi Anda itu kalau mau ngurusin berat badan ya, tinggal gak usah makan nasi.
Gak usah makan nasi aja.
Tapi lauknya dimakan aja udah.
Indomie. Sabar.
Jadi nggak makan nasi tapi makan Indomie.
Sabar.
Mas, tapi lu hybrid training nggak? Karena sekarang tuh lagi trennya ke arah sana kan.
Ya kalau lari sama nge-gym kan hybrid kakakku.
Nah kalau crossfit, functional training.
Crossfit aku pernah nyoba muntah. Nggak kuat aku. Aku tahun depan high rock.
Ya, di mana?
Ya belum tahu daftar di mana. Cuman aku konsisten latihan high rocknya akan mulai start next year. Karena pernah nyoba tahun ini muntah. Jadi penasaran, muntah. Karena aku kebiasaan kan, nyoba hal baru. cuk muntah, berarti tahun depan harus belajar. Tahun ini namatin maraton dulu. Namatin maraton 2 kali, udah pernah, tahun depan high rock. Karena intinya gini, aku pengen di usia 60, aku cerita ke anakku tuh, kalau amin ya dikasih Allah ya. Kasih Allah bisa hidup sampai kecuali keterabak tronton jadi penyet, nggak ada yang tahu kan.
Jangan gitu, tadi udah bilangin sehat terus.
Nggak, semakin tua itu semakin kamu harus adaptif bahwa kematian bisa datang kapan aja. Nah setidaknya aku sudah mencoba hal yang pengen aku coba. Gitu.
Iron Man?
Nggak bisa renang di laut, takut kedalaman. Aku takut ubur-ubur. Iron Man itu kan harus renang di laut, nyebrang dari pantai yang arus kan. Terus aku tanya Dito Percussion, Mas Dito, pas renang di laut pernah disengat ubur-ubur? Wah pernah tuh. Wah dia udah ngomong pernah, aku nggak mau. Oh renang disengat ubur-ubur. Ubur-ubur mana transparan gitu bos?
Iya, nggak kelihatan.
Lagi mulut. Kayak tawon. Aku tuh pernah disengat tawon 2 kali di bibir.
Itu mah ciuman namanya.
Enggak, sekarang tawon itu kan nggak punya otak ya. Jadi bayangin lagi naik motor, nget. Tawonnya mau helm. Terus aku disengat. Lah sekarang disengat tawon itu nabrak aku di itu naik motor buat motor muat. Lah sekarang yang tawon ya kan. Mana bisa aku tahu ada tawon lewat. Ya salah dia kenapa dia nyebrang sembarangan.
Tawon itu udah nggak tahu ada motor di situ.
Ya tawon kan tahu perjalanan. Terus anakku juga benci tawon. Anakku juga sama. Lagi naik motor sangat tawon, tapi kepalanya. Kita sekeluarga sangat benci tawon. Tawon, lebah dan teman-temannya. Ada tawon pokoknya kita balkon. Ada sarang kita bakar. Enggak, aku benci tawon pokoknya.
Serang dia.
Tawon. Nah, tawon tuh ngeselin tawon itu.
Oh ya, kita masuk ke Sorry.
It's going to create an opportunity for them to GDP to get into the U.S. and to bring some innovation, more innovation to the brewers, to the home brewing business. At the same time, it can leverage some of the know-how from KDP to their non-U.S. operations. So there really are some opportunities here for that entity. Having said that, I think
about those. They've had the best first half since 2021, and we're going to talk alternative assets and retirement accounts with ICI CEO Eric Pan. We got a packed show for you, so stay tuned. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
The single best investment opportunity you see in the world, regardless of industry or geography. Why? And again, how are you making it available to your clients?
I think there's no question AI is going to impact everything we do. The opportunity to take great companies and use AI is going to transform. Also the issue of jobs. What do we do with jobs? Because there's no question, you look at things that are customer service oriented and the AI is so much more efficient. As we look at across all these different opportunities, what we really like is data centers in the US. And the one thing that we know is that AI is just going to create this enormous
삼키려고 해가지고 목에서 이렇게 하면서 눈에 렌즈 낀 거냐고요? 맞아요. 오늘 아까 앞에 스케줄이 있었어가지고 그대로 온 거여서 그대로 오늘 파란 렌즈를 꼈거든요. 오랜만에 파랗게 꼈습니다. 한 가지 방법은 아예 처음부터 잘게 자르거나 부숴서 먹는 맞아요. 그래가지고 저는 고기는 진짜 안 씹으면 잘 안 넘어가잖아요. 그래서 고기 진짜 잘게 잘라서 먹으려고 노력해요. 근데 자르기 귀찮은 날은 어쩔 수 없긴 한데 최대한 작게 잘라서 그냥 몇 번 안 씹어도 별로 목이 안 걸리고 그냥 넘어가게 그렇게 하려고 노력은 합니다. 40 몇 번? 누가 눕고 있다. 밑에 국물이 생기고 있어요. 아사히 국물.
But if there's one piece of advice I can give.
Sini, ikut aku.
Diketahui sebelumnya Tribunal
Kalau saya tidur harus pakai TWS. Kalau saya tidur harus pakai TWS. Itu
Oke.
apa efeknya? Dan di posisi TWS saya itu
menyala.
Iya.
Oke. Ya itu
Efeknya
tadi,
apa?
kita dari situ akan ada beban dengan durasi.
Ini mitos atau fakta? Banyak ibu-ibu mengatakan es terus, jangan minum es, nanti pilek. Saya sudah jelasin.
Iya.
Tapi saya
oke.
dokter umum.
Ya, oke,
Sering
oke,
dibantah. Ini pasti dibantah. Ini dokter THT nih pinter loh. Kenapa kalau minum hangat atau sup bawang, itu nyaman tenggorokan, terutama lagi faringitis. Mitos atau fakta? Orang yang kecapean pasti akan ngorok kalau tidurnya.
Ah, itu tonusnya tadi.
Kenapa ada orang yang dulunya itu nggak alergi, terus tiba-tiba jadi alergi debu atau benang sari? Tuh kan? Oke, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, kawan-kawan semua. Masih dengan saya di podcast Tirta Totot. Iya, bukan peng, cipeng krempeng. Ini di rumah sakit UGM, tempat saya dulu sempat berdinas sebagai dokter internship. Dan ini bukti di UGM. Mantap. Ini beneran di UGM, beneran. Ini di gedungnya, gedung tengahnya. Dan di sini tuh dokternya adalah dokter yang nyentrik-nyentrik tapi pinter, tapi jago. Itu alasan kenapa saya tuh dulu kan ditanya, Tirta dulu kok rambutnya diwarna-warni. Ini ya, kalian semua habis ini akan merevisi pendapat itu. Kok dokter rambutnya dicat? Dan pertanyaan kedua, Tirta ini gimana bahason horek? Nah, ini cocok. Ini dokter yang rambutnya dicat, spesialisnya THT, hobinya ben-benan. Tidak lain tidak bukan, kita sambut Dokter Boni.
Salah.
Tuh, udah lihat? Tuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ini bener kan dok? Dokter THT kan?
Insya Allah bener. Bisa dikonfirm di kolegium.
Tuh kan bener.
Insya Allah betul.
Dokter di rumah sakit UGM. Selain di rumah sakit UGM di mana aja dok?
Saya di Hermina sama ada praktekan di apotek. Daerah Kaliurang.
Dokter, boleh diceritakan dulu nggak? History background-nya masuk S1 tuh tahun berapa, terus masuk THT berapa, terus karir-karirnya.
Oke, kalau S1-nya saya tahun 98 di FK.
Oh, tua ya?
Insya Allah kulitnya enggak. Nah, kalau KTP boleh jalan, tapi insya Allah mungkin enggak. KTP-nya jalan terus tapi bentuknya enggak.
Itu kan?
Ini 11-12 kok.
Berarti kayaknya aku tua dong.
Iya, siapa yang naik, siapa yang turun kan iya kan.
Percaya kan senior saya seperti ini kan, ini deleleng kalau ini. Monggo lanjutkan Pak Dokter.
Nah, terus saya lulus waktu itu tahun 2004. 2004 saya lulus dokter umum. Sempat bekerja di Fakultas Kedokteran, saya di bagian IKM dulu. Di IKM malahan dengan waktu itu disaster management malahan belajarnya.
Oh ya?
Jadi karena kejadian 2004 itu bersamaan dengan Aceh.
Iya, tsunami Aceh.
Nah, terus UGM kebetulan ada proyek pembangunan recovery Aceh waktu itu saya malah waktu saya lulus saya ikut sekalian. Sampai 2005 akhir kalau nggak 2006 awal. Itu sekitar setahunan lah saya bekerja di IKM. Nah, setelah itu baru saya putuskan untuk sekolah lagi. Sekolah lagi, dokter THT, masuk THT-nya 2006 akhir. 2006 akhir.
Terus?
Saya selesai PPDS itu tahun 2011.
Oh, tepat waktu ya?
Ya, mundur sidik lah ya. Sidik lah. Biasa masalah tesis kan, biasa. Terus setelah itu, masih praktek swasta di sekitar Jogja, saya ada diajak teman untuk praktek di klinik astuti di Jalan Kaliurang. Itu senior saya yang ngajak waktu itu. Ya sudah, saya ikut di situ. Terus kemudian sempat bekerja di rumah sakit swasta lain. Saya pernah sempat bekerja di rumah sakit Anur juga. Rumah sakit Anur. Terus habis itu diajak sama almarhum Prof. Nartini. Kesininya itu diajak sama almarhum Prof. Nartini. Prof. Nar ngubungin, "Kowe sono gawean, Rung." Nggih, tesis tunggal, Prof. Reneo, siap. Saya ke sini. Ke sini saya pikir waktu itu tuh cuma suruh lihat-lihat rumah sakitnya. Tahu-tahu direktur datang, saya datang. Loh, ini wawancara. Begitu, oh ya Allah, ya sudah. Kecemplonglah airnya di sini.
Itu tahun
2011 akhir. Karena rumah sakit ini kan soft openingnya waktu itu kan 2012 kalau
benar. Iya, pokoknya pas aku lagi koas mau lulus tuh.
Iya, itu 2011 akhir waktu di sini masih sepi, masih belum ada apa-apa. Nah, itu dijambil terus akhirnya ya sudah. Wawancara, ya wis. Ketemu Kabak Yamet, waktu itu Dr. Yeswanto di sini. Terus nanti kapan mau mulai praktek? Hah? Sebegitunya. Nah, terus ya waktu itu kita memang di sini belum ada apa-apa ya di RSA itu. Jadi cuma dikasih ruangan tuh. Dikasih ruangan. Nah, kabaknya nanya, "Ini butuh apa untuk praktek?" Lah punyanya apa? Nggak ada. Oh ya sudah. Saya minta suction aja deh. Selebihnya semuanya alatnya saya yang bawa.
Oh, bawa sendiri.
Bawa kecil-kecil ya, alat hati-hati kan kecil-kecil tuh. Nah, saya bawa sendiri waktu itu. Dah kita jalan-jalan sampai terus akhirnya mulai rumah sakitnya mulai jalan nih. Itu mulai kita pasien stabil tuh kalau nggak salah 2013 atau 14 ya. Pasien mulai stabil, jadi 2 tahun tuh kita bangun. Dari yang dulu itu poli, pasiennya itu 2, sebulan.
2 sebulan?
2 ekor sebulan. Se-ekstrim itu kejadian.
2 sebulan berarti tugasmu apa ya, Dok? Gabut?
Ya akhirnya terus saya membantu di rekam medik, kadang-kadang gitu. Dijadikan sama Prof. Nart ini sempat dijadikan kepala instalasi juga untuk rekam medik. Ya mau nggak mau terus belajar ngoding, ya wes melu ngoding kan gitu. Daripada di sini juga nggak gabut kan, nganggur. Terus kita bangun pelan-pelan. Kita waktu itu karena pasien sudah stabil setelah 2014, di situ kita baru terima kelas. Karena dulu kan kelas nggak mungkin kita didik kalau nggak ada apa-apa.
Betul, kalau nggak ada pasien nggak ada kasus.
Iya, nggak ada kasus. Betul. Kita kan baru mulai stabil itu kan sekitar 2014. Terus akreditasi.